following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
And now is my honor this morning to welcome back to ABNY, New York City's public advocate and Democratic mayoral nominee, Bill de Blasio. Hold on, we're not done yet. As we talked about before, Bill, it's exactly 1 year ago today that you came to ABNY and as what you described as the Lion's Den to talk about your funding and implementing a pre-K plan, as well as several other major initiatives that became the centerpiece of your primary campaign. ABNY has always been a place that brings together all of New York's stakeholders to tackle the big issues that we face and to ensure that New York remains the greatest city in the world. Bill, we look forward to hearing your vision for the future of our great city. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome New York Public Advocate Bill de Blasio and Democratic mayoral nominee. That's what I do. Good luck. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. You know, I want to say Bill Rudin is a wise man to include the acknowledgement of both of our wives early in this presentation. I want to especially thank my wife, Charlene McCrae, who we've been through thick and thin, and I will say that she found every typo and every example of bad English grammar in the speech today, so it's thoroughly improved because of her review. Please thank her for making our presentation better today. I'm so appreciative that so many people are here. As someone wryly said when I spoke last time, they needed a much smaller room. That is the glory of American democracy. I appreciate everyone's presence. I am touched and moved by the presence of two truly great leaders I had the honor to work with over the years, Governor Mario Cuomo and Mayor David Dinkins. Let's thank them again for all they have done for us. Now I want to thank ABNY for hosting this discussion and for inviting me to speak again. Throughout its history, from the fiscal crisis up until today, ABNY has provided a forum for discussing the most crucial issues facing our city. And it's an important opportunity for people from all parts of the city to get together, all sectors of the city to get together and think together. And I especially want to thank Bill Rudin for his leadership and his long-standing commitment to the city of New York. Now, it's an honor to come before you, as I did exactly a year ago today, and then I called for real and concrete change to fight the growing economic inequality in our city. I made the case that we needed new ideas and new resources to produce that change. Today, I want to talk about how we can work together to make that vision a reality. I want to start with a plan I described to you 1 year ago. I believe we must guarantee every child from every neighborhood in our city a quality pre-kindergarten education. And every middle school student a safe after-school environment that keeps them on task, off the streets, and out of harm's way. And as you know, I strongly believe we must back up our commitment with real dollars, a modest tax on those earning more than $500,000 a year. As I said a year ago, these investments are not only critical for those who are struggling, but will help all New Yorkers, because we all benefit when the middle class is growing and more of our fellow citizens are lifted out of poverty. Over the course of this past year, our case for these ideas, our case has grown only stronger. We have seen President Obama and the current Governor Cuomo elevate the importance of early education as the key to transforming our entire educational system and transforming young lives in the process. We've seen studies by the National Bureau of Economic Research that show that providing free full-day pre-kindergarten to families in need is among the most effective means of reducing income inequality, of increasing social mobility, of raising college graduation rates, reducing crime, and increasing wages. And that's why the plan I announced here a year ago has become a centerpiece of my vision for progressive change for our city. But this investment won't simply set those children, our children, on the right path for a brighter future. It sends a signal to families across our city that beyond the skyscrapers and the high-rises that paint our magnificent skyline, we haven't forgotten what New York City really is, a city of neighborhoods, a city that understands our economic might isn't measured solely by the number of millionaires in New York City, but by the promise that every family has a shot at living and working and raising children in our 5 boroughs. Throughout this campaign, I've talked about New York becoming a tale of 2 cities. One that has worked very well for our city's elite, but one that's left millions of everyday New Yorkers behind. And while we certainly don't begrudge our fellow New Yorkers their success, we appreciate their success, we also can't ignore those who struggle to find good jobs and quality schools, those who can't afford quality housing and needed health care, those who don't have access to early childhood and after-school programs that set our children on the right path and keep them there. Make no mistake, when so many New Yorkers are being priced out of their own city, it's not merely another problem for us to consider. It's a crisis of affordability, a crisis that reached a tipping point in the years since the Great Recession began. At the same time, Wall Street has not only recovered to its pre-recession levels, but managed to set new records. At the same time, nearly half our city lives below or near the poverty level. Now, this affordability crisis is different from the soaring crime, for example, we faced 20 or 30 years ago. It's different from the turmoil that followed us and we all had to confront after 9/11. But it's no less urgent and requires no less commitment on the part of our city's leadership to address this problem. On the grassroots level, this crisis, it's felt every day. It's felt by parents speaking in worried whispers after their kids have been put to bed. Parents who are living paycheck to paycheck with nothing left over. It's felt by working single moms who have to cast aside nervous thoughts of their children's whereabouts during those long hours after school lets out, but before their workday ends. It's felt by a once solidly middle-class families who are being squeezed by skyrocketing housing costs. This crisis can be seen starkly in the changing nature of New York City's jobs landscape. Our city has 250,000 more jobs than it had in the year 2000. And for that, I give Mayor Bloomberg his share of the credit. But fully 200,000 of those jobs are in a handful of low-wage sectors, sectors like retail and food service, where the average pay is less than $28,000 a year. Meanwhile, we've shed more than 50,000 middle-class jobs in that same time frame. The combination of low-wage jobs and a housing market that fails to produce sufficiently affordable homes has created painful outcomes. Just one stunning example: 28% of families in our homeless shelters include at least one employed adult. Think about it. There are thousands of our fellow New Yorkers who work hard at their jobs, have families with children, but have no home. Now, it's a foundational American principle that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to make a life for your family. But now, for too many New Yorkers, that dream is in danger of slipping away. As many of you know, I've been talking about these issues over the course of the election and calling for a dramatic change in direction. However, my opponents in this campaign don't think we need a course correction. They choose to accept or else willfully ignore the income inequality that threatens the foundation of who we are as New Yorkers. I have a different point of view. I don't accept this as our destiny. I am committed to tackling this crisis. I know we can solve this crisis of affordability, and we will, but only if we work together. All of us in this room, all the different sectors represented, only if we work together. We cannot resign ourselves to the mindset that says rising inequality is a necessary byproduct of urban success. Instead, we must recognize that the economic insecurity steadily creeping up into the middle class is a threat to our city's long-term future and something we must urgently address. There's nothing divisive about acknowledging the struggle that so many New Yorkers face. It's not class warfare. As my old boss, Bill Clinton, would say, it's arithmetic. And it's reality, the daily experience facing so many among us in our city. And before we can address this great challenge, we first have to be honest with ourselves. We must first admit that the affordability crisis exists and then resolve together to do something about it. Now, many of today's policies have sidestepped the problem or even made it worse. City and state support for CUNY, that great and historic engine of the middle class. Thank you, Jay. That's what you get for putting Jay Hershenson in the first row. State and city support for CUNY has declined sharply, leaving students to pick up the tab through higher tuition, and many, many New Yorkers simply can't afford it. We've lost more than 30,000 seats in our after-school program since 2008, depriving young people of safe, supervised alternatives to the lure of gangs and violence. And while the Bloomberg administration's new housing marketplace plan was admirable and is on track to reach its goal of 165,000 new or preserved units of affordable housing, we are in many ways treading water, barely producing enough new units to offset the affordable homes we lose in any given year. Housing costs in New York City are an all-time high, with average rent having just crossed $3,000 per month for the first time in our history. Now, we need fundamental change that addresses the struggle of millions of New Yorkers, policies that take dead aim at this tale of two cities. For example, instead of giveaways that disproportionately favor luxury housing, I have laid out a plan for hard and fast rules to require construction of new affordable homes for working and middle-class New Yorkers. Instead of pouring billions of dollars into unnecessary and often overly generous tax incentives for large corporations, we need to invest in small businesses, in workforce training, and in CUNY, the most reliable pathways for those seeking a shot at entering the middle class. Instead of an economy that generates poverty wage jobs, we need to raise the wage floor so that working families on every step of the economic ladder can make ends meet and see a way up. That's real change. That will make a difference not just for a fortunate few, but for hundreds of thousands of families who have felt shut out of our economy for far too long. And it's big thinking, that's true. But thinking big is what we New Yorkers have done throughout our history. And it's time to think big again and change our approach so that opportunity is something that is open to everyone. We cannot expect prosperity to trickle down from the top. That is a philosophy that's failed time and again. Instead, we must build opportunity from the ground up. Now, I give Mayor Bloomberg great credit for recognizing the need to diversify our economy from its over-reliance on the finance sector, and for strategic investments to create jobs to offset the decline of traditional manufacturing. The administration's emphasis on expanding New York's research universities as a magnet for talent, growing the tech sector and launching the Applied Sciences Initiative, helping to bring back and grow New York City's film and television industry, spurring the rebirth of a new generation of manufacturing. All these policies have helped to create jobs and diversify our tax base and made our economy more resilient. These policies were important, and we shouldn't step back from them, and we won't. But while all those efforts were necessary, alone they are not sufficient to meet today's economic crisis. While those policies, where those policies have come up short is that they have failed to provide meaningful opportunity for the majority of New Yorkers. Today, too few graduates of our public high schools and our CUNY system are finding employment in these emerging industries. And the vast majority of our unemployed and underemployed citizens are cut off from opportunities in these rapidly growing fields. We can do more to fuel the growth of each of these sectors while ensuring that more New Yorkers are filling these jobs. That's why in the tech sector, first of all, I've proposed, or I should say I have borrowed from Scott Stringer a proposal. I have it in my notes here, Scott. I didn't know you would be here, and yet I did. It's right here in my own hand. I've co-proposed a a dedicated 2-year STEM program at CUNY to connect more graduates of our public university system to jobs in the tech industry. A scholarship that encourages tech graduates from CUNY to stay in New York City after graduation to grow companies or start new ventures. And 14 additional industry-linked career and technical education high school programs aligned with job growth projections. Industry-linked, not abstract, career and technical education programs that work with each industry and each business directly. We must move forward with the Brooklyn Tech Triangle Plan and replicate that model to build new economic development hubs across the city. Now, to grow the very exciting film and television production sector and to create more opportunities for New Yorkers in it, I've called for, first, a new film, post-production, and animation school at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. By the way, if those of you who have talked about this topic know that one of the great post-production centers of the world now is Prague in the Czech Republic. We are not going to lose that industry to Prague. Just wanted to say that. Game on, Prague. Let's hear a little patriotism here. We need to triple the enrollment in the Made in New York Production Assistant Training Program, create a film and TV lab modeled after EDC's successful Media Lab for film production, post-production, and animation, and bring more production to Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island. Now, we also must continue to re-envision manufacturing in New York City. You've all probably seen some articles lately that talk about how manufacturing is starting to come back in the United States of America. Our competitive advantages are coming to the fore again. Well, manufacturing was once the backbone of New York's middle-class economy. Today, the average annual wage for a manufacturing worker is over $53,000. In Brooklyn, the number of manufacturing jobs, after decades of decline, has increased in the past 3 years. Advanced manufacturing firms focused on new technologies like 3D printing are rediscovering what made New York such a successful manufacturing hub in the past. Our density, our diversity, our shipping infrastructure, and the innate talent of our people. To allow these firms to grow and thrive, we must tighten restrictions in the zoning code to strengthen the city's 16 industrial business zones, change zoning laws to meet the surging demand for live workspaces and mixed-use development, replicate the success of the Brooklyn Navy Yard on other city-owned industrial land, expand support for manufacturing by investing in maritime and transit infrastructure and digital connectivity that increases the value of industrial zones, and scale up workforce development programs like Brooklyn Workforce Innovations that connect unemployed and underemployed New Yorkers to the industrial jobs of the future. Our workforce development programs, however, must be more about quality than just about quantity. If all we're doing is placing New Yorkers in minimum wage jobs with no opportunity for upward growth or mobility, then quite frankly, we are all failing. That is why I've laid out a plan for strengthening the way we train our workforce by integrating community-based organizations into a citywide workforce development system, expanding the use of apprenticeship programs in major city construction and service contracts to give opportunities to less advantaged New Yorkers in all 5 boroughs, and reinvesting, as I said, I think Jay's going to be applauding again, reinvesting $150 million annually in CUNY. Love these guys. Reinvesting. I'm just going to, whenever I need a little pick-me-up, I'll just say the word CUNY and this whole table will erupt. Reinvesting $150 million annually in CUNY and ensuring that every city high school is connected to a specific college or a specific company or economic sector, every single one. And establishing a job creation coordinator to oversee all workforce development programs in the city. Now, in addition to supporting these emerging sectors, we need to continue to nurture immigrant entrepreneurs who have always been at the heart of New York City's thriving neighborhood economies. To do that, I've proposed creating economic development hubs in at least 12 immigrant and low-income neighborhoods. These would be one-stop shops in multiple languages that bring together all of New York City's business development services in accessible neighborhood locations. Establishing a $100 million revolving loan fund for neighborhood entrepreneurs, giving local businesses, including immigrant small businesses, a second shot at city contracts. This means letting local firms match the price offered by a lowest responsible bid, encouraging local business while still getting the best deal for taxpayers. And most importantly, ending City Hall's fine assault on small businesses by banning quotas. Let me hear it from you, small businesses. Banning quotas, utilizing warnings instead of financial penalties for first-time and minor violations, and making the appeals process for small business owners easier to navigate. We need to do all of these things to continue to grow and diversify New York City's economy. But most fundamentally, we need to do more for the millions of New Yorkers who work long hours for low wages and who suffer the most from New York's affordability crisis. We must raise the wage floor. How? By expanding our paid sick leave law to include hundreds of thousands of working New Yorkers not currently covered, because you shouldn't lose a day's pay to take care of a sick child. We need to, thank you. We need to pass a real living wage law that says if you're receiving city subsidies, you're going to create good-paying jobs for New Yorkers. We've got to crack down on the wage theft that's all too prevalent in our economy. And we have to support efforts to raise wages, and improve conditions in low-wage sectors like fast food and car wash industries, where workers are struggling to assert their most basic rights to come together and bargain collectively for higher wages. Look, for nearly a century, I've said this many times, for nearly a century, unions have provided the most secure path for Americans in low-wage jobs to join the middle class. And it can and it must be that way again. Finally, this is the part of the speech everyone wants to hear. Finally, actually, I think, I'm looking at Scott Stringer, a lot of us in this work have like 6 finalies before we finally, but this is the real finally. In addition to creating good jobs for New Yorkers, we need to tackle the root of our affordability crisis, the rising cost of housing. That's why I proposed an ambitious plan to build or preserve 200,000 affordable units over the next decade. That will put affordable housing in the reach of more families in every neighborhood in this city. Now, we will get there by converting a system based on incentives that have yielded too little to one based on clearer requirements for ability. There will be incentives, there will be opportunities, but there will also be clear requirements for affordability. We need a stronger hand to make sure development will create and preserve places for a diverse range of families to live and raise their kids. When the public action of rezoning creates huge new values for the real estate industry, we will require, not simply encourage, require the production of affordable housing. Now, taken together, the elements of this platform amount to a very, very different vision for our city. It's a vision that says we need a city government that recognizes itself as an instrument to lift people up and to truly foster opportunity for all. Now, look, let me state the most obvious thing I'll say today. I know not everyone in this room agrees with every part of my plan. It would be a shocking historical development if you did. But I know we really all share a set of values. That every child deserves a first-rate education. That everyone who works hard and plays by the rules should be able to earn a wage that can support a family. That people should be able to live in the same neighborhoods they've spent their entire lives in. And most of all, we share a core belief that New York City is the greatest city in the world. It's not just a saying, it's a truth. Not simply because of our economic might, our stunning skyline, our vibrant culture, but because we are a city that leads the nation, in fact, leads the world, in remembering that we are bigger and stronger and better as a city when we make sure that everyone has a shot. So today, let's go forth together, and resolve that the tale of two cities will be in our past, and that building one city will be our future. Thank you.
CUNY.